This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Snow and cold, our top story this hour. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. Sub-zero wind chills and heavy lake effect. It's all in the offering today. Schools across New York and Pennsylvania were closed today due to the dangerous weather conditions.
We do encourage everybody to please take this seriously and dress warmly.
Experts say in conditions like this, it doesn't take long for frostbite to set in.
Boots, gloves, hats, scarves, whatever you need to do to stay warm. So layers really is the key, I think.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul's declared a state of emergency in Oswego and Oneida counties, where up to 3 feet of the lake effect is possible by tonight. Genesee and Wyoming counties under a snow emergency through early tomorrow. There was a travel ban today in the town of Evans in western New York due to the lake effect, and wind chills dipped to 25 below this morning in Cambria and Somerset counties in Pennsylvania. It's the first full day at the office for President Trump at the White House. Here's correspondent Peter Alexander.
And we are off. President Trump wasting no time signing stacks of executive orders that'll test his ability to expand presidential powers.
In one of his first official acts as president, Mr. Trump declared a national emergency at the southern border. Former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security, Jonathan Fahey.
It sends a strong message to these cartels, to Mexico, that their reign on the southern border is over.
Fox News host David Webb says when it comes to immigration policy,
this has been one of the biggest swings from a past presidency to a new presidency and a change.
Trump also Monday designated drug cartels as foreign terrorists, and last night the U.S. Senate approved the Laken-Riley Act, which calls for the deportation of any migrant with a criminal record. It's named after a Georgia nursing student who was brutally murdered by an illegal immigrant. President Trump taking heat for pardoning 1,500 protesters who are implicated in the January 6th Capitol attack.
Donald Trump has determined those individuals should not face any accountability solely because they committed those acts on his behalf.
Former D.C. police officer Michael Fanone, Trump press secretary Carolyn Levitt.
President Trump campaigned on this promise. It should come as no surprise that he delivered on it on day one. And there are people who have been held hostage, as President Trump says, by the Biden DOJ. Many of them, their due process was denied. They were targeted by our Department of Justice while the DOJ turned a blind eye to real criminals.
Idaho grandmother Pam Hemphill pled guilty to a misdemeanor for her role in the Capitol attack. She says she wants no part of a Trump pardon.
I already have decided I will not take a pardon from Trump. That would give the wrong message. I'm not going to rewrite their story for them.
Trump again last night called the jailed January 6 protesters hostages while issuing his pardon. The U.S. Senate last night confirming the first Trump cabinet pick.
The nomination of the great Senator Marco Rubio from the state of Florida is confirmed.
Marco Rubio, now Secretary of State Rubio, and he says ending the war in Ukraine is one of his top priorities.
It's a complex conflict that's going on. There's no doubt about it. It's one that Russia started. Ukraine is suffering terribly from it, but it's going to be the official policy of the United States that the war has to end, and we're going to do everything possible to bring that about. As the president said when he was campaigning, he wants the dying to stop. He wants the destruction to stop.
Rubio is the first Latino to hold the post of Secretary of State. The two-man DOJ team is -1. There's already been a reduction in the Government Efficiency Commission, which was heavily touted by President Trump. Vivek Ramaswamy is stepping down from DOJ, the Department of Government Efficiency, and that means the world's richest man, Elon Musk, will run that cost-cutting operation on his own. Red flag warnings continue today in fire-ravaged Southern California. Victor Davis Hanson with the Hoover Institution says liberal policies have exacerbated this natural disaster near L.A.
The shock of L.A. is most of the people that were burned out were very, very left-wing and very wealthy. And this was what's shocking politically, because the consequences of their votes and their ideology had never really personally affected them to this degree.
Hansen says the extent of the damage could have been mitigated if California had enacted common sense fire management strategies.
The water, the timber, the preventive maintenance on the hillsides, the response times, it's all incompetent. It's almost like a reawakening.
The LA wildfires could go down in history as the most costly natural disaster this country has ever seen. It's a planetary parade. 6 planets, count them 6, will grace the night sky this month. Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are visible with the naked eye. You'll need a pair of binoculars to see Uranus and Neptune. College football champion crowned last night in Atlanta.
It's Ohio State together at the mountaintop. Champions of college football.
The Buckeyes beat the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame to win their first national title in over a decade. Still to come on the Noon Report, the Hochul budget, the Trump effect, and Ryan Corbett free at last.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. We're in the thick of the Arctic cold blast, which will be with us for another night and day. With that will come lake snows for some. I'll have forecast details in 10.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Let's check the stories making news across New York and Pennsylvania. And we'll begin with some very good news. A Dansville, New York man held hostage by the Taliban in Afghanistan is finally free after nearly 900 days in captivity. He's 42-year-old Ryan Corbett, and he'd been held against his will since the summer of 2022. Corbett was let go in a prisoner's swap orchestrated by both the Trump and Biden administrations. Corbett's wife, Anna, says her heart is filled with overwhelming gratitude. New York Governor Kathy Hochul takes the wraps off a more than $252 billion state budget proposal today. It's $19 billion more than last year's budget and would pay for things like free meals at school, tax cuts, and inflation refund checks. Senate Minority Leader Rob Ortt has a lot of questions about the governor's so-called affordability agenda.
If we could spend our way to an affordable state, we would already be the most affordable state in the country.
The governor's calling for $1 billion middle-class tax cut and wants to triple the child tax credit. Lawmakers have till the 1st of April to reach a deal on the budget. Pennsylvania's governor says he stands ready to work with the new Trump administration. However, Josh Shapiro warns that cooperation will end if the White House attempts to erode fundamental freedoms. The governor also says he believes there's more that unites us than divides us and called for the Trump White House to focus on common sense issues that bring people together. New York's Republican Party is hopeful that a successful Trump presidency could help the GOP defeat Kathy Hochul in next year's gubernatorial race. Here's GOP Chair Ed Cox.
I think people in New York feel it's time for a change and to have a real two-party system by electing a Republican governor.
Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie admits Democrats need to improve their PR campaign.
This last election, it was all abortion and Trump stinks. And so I think Democrats just have to do a better job of messaging.
It's been nearly 20 years since New York's last Republican governor, George Pataki. He is also the last Republican to hold any state office of any kind in the Empire State. As the Trump presidency takes shape, local GOP activists are weighing in on how things will change in the new administration.
He was formidable, he was positive, but he wasn't going to mess around. This man he's got an agenda and he's going to get it done, and we're all here behind him, and I think he's got the mandate of the country and the world.
Kelly Pinero of Amherst, New York, attended an inaugural watch party yesterday. Erie County Democratic Party Chair Jeremy Zellner says he understands the excitement, but
folks want to be safe. All of us want folks to be safe. Folks want to be able to afford living in this country. That's what we should be focused on right now, not these farcical things that are trying to distract people. The Panama Canal, Greenland, annexing Canada.
Jasmine Gripper with the New York Working Families Party is worried about the Trump immigration agenda.
Mass deportations are harmful on, breaking up families, but beyond that, there's an economic impact to New York. Immigrants are a part of our economy.
The president says he will focus his deportation efforts on dangerous migrants with criminal records. He is vowing ICE raids in cities like New York, but will not say when for obvious reasons. Pennsylvania Congressman Glenn Thompson joined Family Life News today to talk about the Trump administration and what he thinks about this transfer of power. Boy, you talk about hitting the ground running. He doesn't waste a minute. How's the president doing out of the gates, GT?
The president's out of the gate at a full gallop. I mean, he even signed dozens of executive orders live at one of the balls last night. He is not wasting a single moment.
The Republican representative says border security and inflation reduction are the top two priorities of the Trump White House.
Trump 45, it was a dress rehearsal. He learned a lot. He encountered a lot of obstacles at times and issues, but he learned what to do and what not to do. And so I think we're going to see probably the most effective presidential administration in history.
Congressman Thompson chairs the House Agriculture Committee in Congress. 2 people are dead after a house fire in Bradford County, Pennsylvania. Those flames broke out at a home in Herrick Township. That's just north of Wyalusing. A GoFundMe site has been set up to help out the victims' families. And it's Regents Week in New York. Schools are testing students in hundreds of districts statewide, but this mom thinks there ought to be an opt-out for kids who don't want to take the test.
There should definitely be an out for that and not having that option. And I think it should become effective immediately rather than continuing this discussion for the next 4 years. They've been discussing it for years already. We don't need to keep dragging it out.
There are changes coming to the state regents exams, but not for a couple more years at least. Sports is next. We call it the 2-minute drill right here on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, it was the outcome most expected as Ohio State has won college football's national championship, a 34-23 defeat of Notre Dame. It is the Buckeyes' first national title since 2014 and their 9th overall. Notre Dame opened the game with a long drive that took over 9 minutes and grabbed a 7-0 lead, and at that point I thought, hey, we might have a game worth watching. But then Ohio State's dominance on both sides of the ball took over. They went up 28-7 early in the third quarter. The Fighting Irish tried to rally, but it was not enough. Let's talk basketball. At Madison Square Garden, the Knicks sent the home crowd home happy. They beat Atlanta 119-110. Jalen Brunson led the way with 34 points. Mikal Bridges chipped in with 26. New York has now won 2 of their last 3 to improve to 28-16 on the season. Other winners on the hardwood, the Celtics, Cavs, Hornets, Pistons, Grizzlies, Pelicans, and Bulls. Well, you score 4 goals in a game, you think you have a pretty good shot at winning the game. But that was not the case for the Sabres last night. Buffalo came back from a 2-goal deficit to tie things up at 3, but then the Kraken took over from there and won it 6-4. Jack Quinn, Jason Tucker, Tage Thompson, and Alex Tuck all lit the lamp for the Sabres. Penguins got 5 goals from 5 different players. They dominated the Kings 5-1. The Islanders have won back-to-back games after taking down Columbus 3-1. Bo Horvat a couple of goals. Also picking up wins, the Bruins, Maple Leafs, Wild, Blues, Hurricanes, and Utah. That is a look at sports.
Thank you, Randy Man. Still to come on the Noon Report, snow and cold, Trump's first day, and passing notes at the White House.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Well, recently, in an article written for the Institute for Family Studies, Patrick Brown highlighted the notable decline of marriage and of married parenthood among Republican voters. The GOP has long enjoyed larger support from married parents. However, in the most recent election, as Brown writes, and I quote, there was essentially no political advantage in 2024 for Republicans in congressional districts with higher shares of births to married parents. In fact, some of the congressional districts with the highest share of births within marriage are wealthy Democratic strongholds: New York's Upper West Side, the Boston suburbs, Northern Virginia, Silicon Valley. Compare this to 2012, in which Republicans dramatically outperformed Democrats in counties where higher shares of babies were born to married couples. This suggests that in years to come, if current trends persist, the GOP advantage with married parents may not be rock solid. Now, one reason for this shift is the Republican base has shifted from college-educated upper and middle-class voters to more working-class voters without a college degree. And that's the group in which marriage rates have most cratered in recent decades. Back in 1990, over half of working-class American adults were married. By 2017, that number had dropped to 39%, prompting some to declare marriage a so-called luxury good. Religious conservatives should be deeply concerned about the decline of marriage on the left and now as well as the right. As Brown concluded in his article, it's time for some soul searching in this movement, including, and I quote, prioritizing pro-family efforts from eliminating marriage penalties and expanding the child tax credit to offering a baby bonus to new parents and more. And especially for Christians, we have to know that the most important political engagement will happen in the years between the elections. It's going to take more than voter registration drives and righteous anger at progressives to make America great. Only a full-scale effort to rebuild and reprioritize marriage, starting in our own communities, can accomplish that. Because if being conservative means anything at all, it means recognizing that who we are in our own houses is even more important than who is in the White House. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored by Shane Morris. I want to give a special thank you today to Gordon and Pamela of San Carlos, California. Thanks for being a monthly partner of the Colson Center and making this episode of Breakpoint possible. If you appreciate Breakpoint and the clarity it brings on cultural issues of our day, please leave us a review wherever you download your podcast. And for more resources like this one, visit us at breakpoint.org.
Thank you, John. Outside we go. Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Bitterly cold. We'll have sunshine, clouds, and flurries. A lake effect snow band off Lake Erie will be shifting north across the region today and then south tonight. In that band, multiple inches of additional snow can be expected. Temperatures this afternoon reaching the lower mid-teens, dropping back toward or below zero in some cases tonight. Tomorrow, clouds, sun, a few flurries, and high temperatures just a bit above 10.
All right, staying busy at the Weather Center, the always reliable Kevin Williams. Thank you. This is the Noon Report. I'm Bob Price. Lots going on Tuesday, the 21st of January. Schools across New York and Pennsylvania shut down today due to the dangerous cold out there. Experts say in conditions like this, it only takes about 10 minutes for frostbite to settle in.
Even if you had a really warm coat, but you had bare hands or your face was uncovered, noses and cheeks and things like that can be some of the first places to be frostbit.
In addition to the cold, the lake belt's getting pummeled today with another 2 to 3 feet of heavy lake effect snow. And further south,
this is a serious Arctic blast. It's dangerous. It's life-threatening.
Snow falling in places like Houston, Texas today. Reporter Priscilla Thompson.
Just to put it into context, if Houston gets more than 3 inches of snow today, which is a possibility, it would be the biggest snowstorm here since 1895.
It's snowing today in New Orleans, and that hasn't happened in 15 years.
We're not a snow city, so we don't have plows or salt spreaders.
Power problems expected today all along the U.S. Gulf Coast. President Trump and Vice President Vance attended the National Prayer Service today at the Washington National Cathedral. That service has been held the day after the inauguration since the early 1930s. The new president wasting no time enacting his America First agenda. Correspondent Jared Hill.
The president signed roughly 200 executive orders, rolling back dozens of Biden-era policies in the process, including pulling the U.S. again out of the Paris Climate Agreement. President Trump also offered clemency to all of the nearly 1,500 people charged or convicted in relation to storming the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
Trump's also declared a national emergency at our southern border and designated dangerous drug cartels as foreign terrorists.
I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions.
One of the first pieces of legislation he'll sign is the Laken Riley Act, named after a Georgia nursing student who was murdered by an illegal immigrant. New York officials are concerned about the president's mass deportation plans. Scott Pringle has that story.
The state attorney general, Letitia James, says she'll always protect the legal rights of immigrants and their families and communities, and is reviewing the state's legal options when it comes to Trump's immigration executive orders. Immigrant rights advocate Power Malou is taking action.
What we're going to be doing is making sure that we go around to the different shelters and to the different sites, and we want to make sure that the city is not cooperating with ICE.
New York City Comptroller Brad Lander says Trump's mass deportation agenda is a family separation policy that'll harm the health of New York City residents.
The Trump administration says, hold on a minute. They say they've got a mandate from the American people to enforce immigration law. Border czar Tom Homan vows to deport dangerous migrants with criminal records from cities like New York. New York Governor Kathy Hochul taking the raps today off a more than $252 billion budget proposal. It's about $19 billion more than last year's spending plan. Lawmakers have until April 1st to reach a deal on the budget. The first of the Trump cabinet picks has been confirmed. Correspondent Scott McFarland.
Marco Rubio, the longtime Florida senator who in 2016 challenged Trump for the Republican nomination for president, has since become a close Trump ally, and he now becomes an early member of the Trump administration and Trump cabinet. It was an overwhelming vote in the Senate, 99-0.
And with that vote, Rubio becomes America's 72nd Secretary of State. He was sworn in this morning by Vice President Vance.
Everything we do must be justified by the answer to one of three questions. Does it make us stronger? Does it make us safer? And does it make us more prosperous? If it doesn't do one of those three things, we will not do it.
Rubio is the first Latino to hold the post of America's top ambassador and joked with the VP while speaking in Spanish today.
Y más bueno en la historia de toda la humanidad. Y es un gran honor y le doy las gracias al presidente Trump por esta oportunidad. I just said I saved a bunch of money by switching to Geico. That's what I said. So.
Love a guy with a sense of humor. That's Secretary of State now, Marco Rubio. 2 U.S. citizens, including Dansville, New York native Ryan Corbett, have been released from captivity by the Taliban in Afghanistan. Corbett was held by the terror group for nearly 900 days. His wife said in a statement today, she is overwhelmed with gratitude. We've got devastating news from Turkey today. At least 66 are dead, more than 50 hurt in a hotel fire at a ski resort. People on the upper floors of that hotel had to use bed sheets tied together to climb down to safety. A new survey shows the rich are getting richer.
Oxfam International says the wealth of the world's billionaires grew 3 times faster in 2024 than in 2023. The group also predicts the world will have at least 5 trillionaires over the next decade, while 44% of the global population, 3.6 billion people, live in poverty.
Michael Wallace reporting. Well, 5 years after the first case of COVID was confirmed in this country, researchers say the virus could be causing increased cases of chronic fatigue. Up to 58% of people with long COVID meet the criteria for chronic fatigue. You're listening to the Noon Report for a Tuesday on Family Life.
Welcome back to another edition of Hometown Heroes on Family Life. I'm Mark Webster, and this week's guest is Pastor Ray Oberst, co-founder of the Parker Jordan Christian Academy, a growing option for families in Allegheny County.
2021 was our first year, so we're in our 4th year right now. The name Parker Jordan comes as kind of a legacy name to a couple of gentlemen that were part of a ministry in the Wellsville area. That ministry helped us get started and off our feet.
How hard has it been to make a go of it? Private schools have been struggling struggling in general. You're in Allegheny County, kind of rural area, not tremendously affluent. How's it going so well?
It has been very interesting. The planning for PJCA started in 2019, and actually many years before that, the Lord had put the idea of a Christian school in my wife and I's heart for many years, and we just pray about it, and it was never the right time. 2019 seemed to be the right time. He put it on our heart, and we started to gather a team of people around it and started making plans. Right as that happened, the spring of 2020, the pandemic hit, which seemed to be like, wonder what we're doing.
Yeah,
is this
rough timing there.
doing? Yeah, this is very interesting, Lord. But we kept plugging away. And of course, along with the pandemic was a downturn in the economy. Everything in the natural seemed to be working against what God was trying to do here. But he said to keep going and to trust him. There's a reason there aren't very many Christian schools in this area. There was nothing K-12 in our county at all. And we really feel that that's why God asked us to do this at this time, and we just trusted him.
Against all those odds we went over, here you are with a waiting list. Why do you think that is?
We get kids for all kinds of reasons. Initially, most of the kids that came to us is because there was a real academic struggle, a need that wasn't being met. The pandemic put kids behind, a bunch of anxieties, fears about being at school in the public school system. Some of it was family values that didn't align anymore. So families came to us for a lot of reasons, but mostly it was academic concerns. The kids falling really far behind. Our first year, we had 15 kids. In the following year, we had 24. The year after that was 42. It grew really quickly as word spread about what we were doing and the success that kids were having. They were finding peace. Anxieties were being cleared up. Just being able to pray with kids, teach them the Word of God, invite them into a relationship with Christ seemed to put kids on a really good footing for academic success.
There is just a tremendous hunger out there right now.
Absolutely. There is a huge hunger. There's a huge need, just a need for Christ, a need for God, a need for his word. And anywhere families can find a way to help their kids with that is where they're reaching for. I admire the public schools. I worked the public school system for 20 years. I was a teacher. A lot of amazing people doing the best they can. But the one thing that was always a hindrance was the ability to share the word of God with kids. And when kids are suffering and they're hurting, that's the one thing that they absolutely need is the word of God. And they need to see the love of Christ shared with them. They need prayer, adults praying with them. And that's been a big difference.
One of the big problems with Christian education is kids who want to play sports and who are unable to do that, but you've managed to forge some ties there to allow that to happen.
We have just a great relationship with our local district. My wife and I are both 1996 graduates of Bolivar Richburg, so we have had that deep connection to the community. And then I had taught at Bolivar Richburg for 6 years, and so when we found ourselves in Little Genesee within that district, we've already had some really great relationships. So when the Lord put the school there, we had the opportunity to expand. We initially started K-8, but a couple years ago, the Lord said, time to move up higher grades. And one of the requests from parents that they really wanted us to see was a way for kids to play sports. Being a really small Christian school, we didn't have the numbers to create our own sports programs or field a team of any kind. So I approached Bolivar Richburg, the superintendent and the Board of Education and the community and said, if our parents raise the funds, would you consider allowing us to combine some sports with you and allow our kids to play? And the response at the school was wonderful. And it's just opened up a lot of doors of opportunity for students to be a light with their friends, with their teammates. It has allowed us to forge better relationships and stronger relationships with our local public school. And it's been a real blessing.
You've also served a lot of kids who need special education services, and that's certainly an important niche to fill as well.
It really is. 20% or so of our students have an IEP or some kind of special services needed. And that's another service that we're able to work with our local district. Bolivar Richburg sends to us a special ed teacher and helps meet those needs within our building. So that's been a blessing to be able to welcome kids of all kinds of abilities and needs.
Given the times we live in, it seems with that hunger we talked about that the appetite for Christian education is probably going to continue to grow.
I really think it is. There's a lot of families that are hurting the economy, just the nature of what's going on in our world, the confusion and fears. There's a desire and a hunger growing for answers, for help, for support. And being one more avenue, we enjoy a lot of support from local churches too, to be one more place where families and kids can go to have the gospel shared with them, the Word of God shared with them, and just to be encouraged.
That's Pastor Ray Oberst, co-founder and executive director of Allegheny County's Parker Jordan Christian Academy. Learn more at parkerjordanca.org. Please join us again next time as we search for your home, your town, your hero. It's Hometown Heroes on Family Life.
Excellent work as always. Thank you, Mark. Hometown Heroes comes your way Tuesdays during the Noon Report. You can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature along with all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Bitterly cold air continues to grip the region and will do so for another night and day. Lake effect snows will continue to pile up as bands shift across the lake belts with additional accumulations. For this afternoon, bitterly cold. We'll have sunshine, clouds, and flurries. A lake effect snow band off Lake Erie will be shifting north across the region today and then south tonight. In that band, multiple inches of additional snow can be expected in some locales of western New York, focusing particularly on Erie County, Genesee, and Wyoming. Temperatures this afternoon reaching the lower mid-teens, dropping back toward or below zero in some cases tonight. Tomorrow, clouds, sun, a few flurries, and high temperatures just a bit above 10.
Okay, Kevin, thank you very much. Finally at noon, passing notes at the White House. President Trump discovered yesterday, and quite by accident, I should add, a letter left for him in the Resolute desk. It was written by his predecessor, Joe Biden. That unveiling was captured on live television while Trump was signing executive orders. Take a listen.
President Trump, did President Biden leave you a letter?
He may have. Wait. Don't they leave it in the desk? I don't know. Oh.
What's in there?
Thank you, Peter. It could have been years before we found this stuff.
Yeah, he found the letter after looking in the desk, the president being questioned there by Peter Doocy at Fox News. Now, Trump did not disclose the contents of that letter from the former president. It is tradition in this country that whenever a new president is sworn in, the outgoing one leaves a letter in the Oval Office, and Trump found his last night. And that's our world, the world we live in. Tuesday, January 21st. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.